Part 5 is on simple interest.
Part 5.
You will pay interest in your life because sometime you're going to have to buy something that you don't have the money for. And when you don't have the money for it, whoever gives you the money is going to say, I'll give you the money, but you're going to have to pay me back a little bit more than I gave you. And that's the idea of interest. And it's usually involved with percentages. So the amount that you invest or borrow is called the principal. Not the principal of the school, but a similar word. The interest fee is usually computed as a percentage of the principal, and that is called the interest rate. Right? So the ideas of interest rates is sort of like you need money for something, and you're like, you go to someone, say, I need $5, but Nathan's like, no, buddy. I gave you $5 last week and you didn't give it back. So I'm not giving you $5 again. Right? Then you're like, no, I'll really pay you back. And then this time he says, well, if I give you $5, you have to pay me back $6. And so you're like, but I really need the $5, so it's worth it for me. Right? Sometimes you need the money for something and you'd be willing to say, I'm gonna get the money later, but I'd be willing to pay someone a little bit extra for that. And that's sort of the idea of interest. If you went from $5 to $6, you're paying $1, or that, and 1 out of 5 is 0.2 or 20%. So your simple interest would be a 20% interest rate based on that. Usually though, when you're buying something and you're getting an interest rate, it's because you can't pay it off for maybe a longer time, or maybe you're making an investment and you'd like to keep it in there for a year. So there's lots of investments too. Lots of banks will say, hey, if you give us a certain amount of money at the end of the year, we'll give you 3% more. They're like, okay, if I give you $100 at the end of the year, they give you back $103. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's at least more than the $100 you had. And if you weren't going to use that $100 anyways, last time I kept $100 in my wallet for a whole year, when I looked back in my wallet, it was still $100. It didn't get bigger. Your wallet doesn't pay you interest. So if you have money that you know that you're not going to spend, it might make sense to put it somewhere that gives you interest. So here's Evelyn. She has $3,000 that she does not need. And the bank pays 5% of the principal in simple interest each year that the money's in a savings account. So she starts off with $3,000. And if we want to figure out 5% of something, we multiply by 0.05. So each year, she's going to get $150 for doing nothing. I love it when people give me money for doing nothing. Right? There's not too many jobs out there that you can apply for that. But if you have, most of the jobs that you apply for, you have to work, and then you work and get money. And if you have money, then there's options like this, where you can put it away and get extra money for nothing. And that is, I've been working really hard to hopefully do lots of getting extra money for nothing. That's my plan.
I should have looked first.
It's simple interest. Did you do it extra?
I was adding it to each though.
Yeah, I know. That's normally how it works. This simple interest means you just get the same percentage off your original all the way. Just kind of sucks. Compound interest
The original.
off only the original. Compound interest that we're going to look at later will be even better. So if we click on these, we just keep adding 150. Right? 5 years later, she has $750 more than she had originally.
But
Right?
can't you just take, at year one, can't you just take the money out of the account and then,
Do it again?
Yeah.
That would be smarter, right? And most banks will do that. That's something we're gonna learn later called compound interest. But compound interest is a little bit, the mathematics is a little bit more complicated, but absolutely, that is normally what happens. It'd be like, she's kinda dumb not to start over again with the new money she has. Right? Why not put 3,150 and get 5% on that, and the next year she would make a little bit more than 150. And the next year make a little bit more on that, and more on that. And that's something called compound interest. And most things in real life are work on compound interest. But we use simple interest first to get the idea of interest, and then we'll move to compound interest after that.
Hostia, una pregunta. Si hay una persona que me debe en $10 y se ha retrasado como en 3 meses, ¿qué debo hacer para que me lo paguen?
I'm not sure, like,
His ass.
he asked if he gave someone money and it's been 3 months and they haven't paid them back, what should you do? Right? It kind of,
Well, we know what the banks do.
right, the banks come after your house, they come after the things that you have. And when you borrow money from a bank, you sign sort of papers saying what would happen if you don't pay it back.
Yeah, and even if they didn't get to, let's say they started at that point, wanting to just take all your stuff, which they could by then. At the very least, if they allow you to keep your stuff, you are paying serious NSF fees, penalties, probably higher interest, all within the contract and their rights.
But in the case where you're doing it with a friend, you probably didn't set up any legal kind.
Then what you did was you burned a bridge.
Right? That means probably next time you won't give that person money. And sometimes,
Have you had some friends like that?
oh, absolutely.
Like even as an adult?
More acquaintances than not necessarily, right?
Yeah.
I had an ex-neighbor who was struggling financially.
Yeah.
And came to me and said, could I have this amount of money? And and I'll get it back to you, And I kind of knew,
Did he?
that it wasn't gonna come back to me.
Yeah.
But
But now,
when I was like, well,
give
this
everybody one
this
chance.
is your one chance. And if it doesn't work, well then
You are
that
forever.
that bridge has been burned, and then it's sort of like I knew that might happen.
Yeah, I have friends for sure. I have friends that I know I will lend money to, and then I have friends that I'm like, sorry buddy, I'll look somewhere else. And I have quite a few friends who ask.
So it's a little bit tricky, right? Because you want to help out a friend, but you also don't want to be taken advantage of.
No,
And there's also in life people who go and take advantage, right? And you might even have a friend who wants to take advantage of you one day and says, "Oh, can I borrow $10?" They pay you back. Then the next week, "Oh, I need $20." They pay you back. But when they ask for $100, they don't pay you back, and they were just setting you up for
yeah,
that. There's people out there that do that. So you just have to be a little bit careful. How do I know? If someone says, "How do I know you'll pay me back?" Right?
cause after all, it's nice to be nice, but you definitely have to look out for yourself.
Yeah, because it's nice to be nice, but people unfortunately are not always nice. So if you look at your graph here, we can put these things on. At year 0, she started with $3,000. Then year 1, we have add the 150, then add the 150, and you can see that her amount is going up
You said 3,000?
from left to right. Another unit that we are gonna do later in this year is come up with an equation that shows the relationship between these. We haven't done this yet, but this equation says I started with $3,000 and T is years. If I did 1 year, I'd add 150 once. If T was 2 years, I'd add 150 twice. If T is 3 years, I'd add 150 3 times. So we're gonna learn how to draw straight lines and come up with their equations later on in another unit. Whew, we got lots of math to learn. I'm a little nervous. How much math we got to still learn yet?
Yeah.
And it's already after spring break.
There is not a lot of school left.
Don't say that.
That's okay.
There's only like 50 something days left. I think.
So we might have to pick up the pace a little bit. More homework done at home.
No,
Nope.
please. No.
All right.
Honestly, yeah, no.
So here's the formula for simple interest. And often it's just written because when you put things close together in mathematics, it means multiplying. And as we start to use more variables, the x as a multiplication symbol gets a little confusing because you're like, is that an x that's a multiplication or is that an x that's a variable? So we start putting things together. So simple interest is found by taking the amount you started with, your interest rate as a decimal, because it's a percentage, and then how many times you do that. So if we use this formula, if we use this formula for, what was her name? Evelyn. Look what happens. She had $3,000. Her interest rate was 5%. So we changed that to a decimal. And she stayed in that account for 5 years. So now if I put that all in there, and I go to my calculator, 3,000 times 0.05 times 5. Did she make $750 of interest? Let's look at the chart at the end of 5 years. 3,000 plus 750. That's how much she made. So the simple interest formula lets us figure that out. Now, time is in years, and sometimes they'll give you, well, how much would you get in 6 months? Or how much would you get in 3 weeks? So we have some ratios that we can use for conversion. Did you know that 1 year has 12 months? Everybody's good on that? Did you know that 1 year has 52 weeks? Yeah. And 1 year has 365 days? Does anybody know how many days there are in 52 weeks?
365 days.
365. Because 52 weeks means 1 year, and 1 year means 365, so then you can do those. Right? Some of you were trying to do 52 times 7, you're like, oh, but this is easier because you have the ratios. Simple interest on a loan of 2,000. Take your calculators out. What you're going to do is you're going to put these numbers into your formula. Right? Here was our formula. Interest equals PRT. How do we write that into our formula? Do we know what the principal was? How much money did they start with? 2,000. Now, mathematically, I like to use brackets instead of the multiplication sign. So as soon as I substitute a number in for something, I put 2,000. What's the interest rate? As a decimal. 0.045. I put that in brackets. And then brackets again. How long did they do it for?
5 years.
5 years. I like to use the brackets Sometimes people use a dot. The problem with the dot is sometimes the dot gets confused with the decimal place, and then you're like, ooh. I go to type in my calculator. So you can type the brackets right into your calculator. You can do the dots as well. Either way, the interest rate is $450.
I not only do I prefer brackets when writing it, but I also prefer to put it in brackets account.
I probably in the calculator, because I'm lazier than Mr. Shirk, I will use the multiplication sign because it's one button and the bracket costs me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 brackets instead of 2 multiplication signs. 3 times more work, right? That part about math you should learn. How to save time and be lazy. Rory, invest 1,250, simple interest rate of 10% per year. That is a good percentage. If he wants the money to increase to 1875, how long will this take? So this is the beauty about formulas, and it kind of gets into our next unit a little bit. I'll write out my formula. And then I'll write the things that I know. Do I know the principal? I know the principal is the starting amount, $12.50. Do I know the interest rate? Yes, 10%. I changed that to a decimal. Do I know the time? No, that's the question. So I want to put a T here because I don't know the time. Do I know how much interest? This one's a little bit tricky. It's not 1875 for the interest. How do we find the interest? The interest will equal the final amount minus the original amount. Oops.
Which means I equals A minus P.
1250. And that's going to equal $625. That's what I'll put in on this side. 625. So how do we go about getting this? And this will be our next unit, but I want to get this. Well, on the right-hand side, you see that this means 1250 times this times this? I could multiply those two together. 1250 times 0.1, I could take out my calculator, and I will get 125. And then that still has the t beside it, because I don't know what that is. That would still need to get multiplied. And we're going to learn in math, if 125 times t is 625, if I want to find out what the t is, what's the opposite of multiplying by 125? I'm going to divide by 125 here, and I'm going to divide by 125 here, and these 125s will go away. And 625 divided by 125 is 5 years. All right, this is where we'll stop for today.